Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome in. Thank you, everybody, for joining the Local Optics Visibility Series. The topic is unlocking the full potential and power of MLAP. MLAP does stand for Multi-Location Analytics Platform, but through the session today, you will hear MLAP and just know that that's what that means. My name is Alyssa Draper. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Local Optics. I will be acting as your MC for the session today. We do have a jam-packed agenda. Some of you may see, we do have Mr. Tommy Mello on, who will kick us off for the session today. Then you'll come back to me, where we'll go through a few slides and talk a little bit about the reality today that most marketers face when it comes to blending market intelligence in with business intelligence, leading us into why we've built MLAP, how we're helping you turn data into decisions, and closing it out with a live demonstration, and of course, time for Q&A. So without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to introduce all of you who don't know who he is to Tommy Mello. Tommy is the founder of A1 Garage. He's also a huge friend, supporter, and ally to Local Optics and everything that we do here. And we're excited to have him join us today. Tommy?
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. I'll tell you guys just a little bit of my story. I started the company painting garage doors in 2005-06. And decided to start a garage door business. The first 10 years I call practice. Got my mom to move out from Michigan in 2010. I needed somebody I could trust. Right now, 2017, big year, got onto ServiceTitan. We not only got onto ServiceTitan, but I started a podcast and met one of my best mentors, Al Levy. If you guys haven't read his book, The 7 Power Contractor, it's phenomenal. And I just started to get obsessed with learning. And I got obsessed with learning how to get onto the right software, the right lead gen, how to recruit better. And as the years have gone by, I mean, the company continues to get better and better, and we raise our lid. And this year we'll do north of 410 million. And I used to get excited about revenue until I started realizing I wasn't making much money. So now we talk about profit. And when I call all my buddies up, we don't even talk about revenue. We talk about, did you beat month over month, July over last July? And how much dollars did you put in the bank? And we're north of 25% of the bottom line. And I focus on 3 major things: culture being number 1, marketing being number 2. And I split marketing into 2 things: getting leads and getting great people on the team. We interview 50 technicians to hire 1. Right now, we doubled our training center. We've got about 75 guys we're training per month. So I just want you to think about, if you graduate 75 technicians, the first day they start, you need to generate about 3 leads. So that's 225 new leads per day. Now we're running approximately 27 calls per month, 27,000. That's not 27,000 leads. It's about 34,000 leads. And then some of those are form fill, some of those are phone calls. And I got obsessed years ago with attribution, understanding where my leads are coming from. So I've got 7,000 call tracking numbers, and then UTM parameters are on every single web page. I just had the CEO of Angie's List at my house. I was on the phone with him this weekend. You know, we look at every single way to get a lead. I've got a team that goes out door knocking. But I got really, really, really into the reviews in 2010. I was the first one on Yelp and home service. My buddy's now wife had worked there. And he's like, dude, you done my garage door. She's going to get your account set up. I'll leave you a good review. And it's this cool thing called Yelp. And, you know, now there's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Grok, there's Perplexity, it goes on in Gemini. And so I'm kind of like obsessed with learning about the newest, latest, and greatest and how to dominate on the digital side. We still do TV, radio, billboards, bus stops. Like I said, we got the canvassing team. We send out a lot of mailers. But I still think if you could rank number 1 on Google, more importantly than the LLMs. Everybody's like, everybody's going to the LLMs now. No, they're not. That's a lie. It's still single digits. People are going to Google when their shit breaks down, and they're looking at reviews, and they're looking at your hours of operation. And so I'm open 24/7. We run calls that are planned on from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I found Nate through a friend of mine which is Local Optics, and he's going to be talking to you guys. He's one of those guys that I seen him start typing, and he had 27 windows open. He's popping stuff up, and he knew Google better than anybody. And he said, "Look, Tommy, the goal of Google is not to allow organic to be easy to beat because they got to have some organic section, but they want you to do paid." And I spend $4.5 million a month, but my number one lead source is my location pages. And we're working on making those 24-hour showrooms. We're in the process of doing that. And the first time I got on with Nate's team, they kind of went through and they showed me a lot of stuff. Basically, it was really hard to track because we're in 40 markets and we're in 24 states. And I didn't have a clear visibility on when something went down or when something wasn't going right or what citation sites, or maybe I'm showing up number one, but the number two guys got way more reviews, so I'm not getting any click-through rate. And Nate was able to, I think really this new product was really built on the back of what I needed for me. It was just hard to keep track of everything. And another big thing that Nate kind of taught me was when I go into a market, where to pick the right location. And the Local Optics is the best at that. Like, we've shut locations down. There's no traffic. They're in the wrong areas. They're not an affluent client. So, I've put a lot of effort and energy with this team into, I'm no longer making guesses. I know where every dollar is going. I've used every product out there. I mean, every product that you could track marketing with. I'm a big advocate of ServiceTitan. We use Intact because it's a step above QuickBooks. We've got our HR tools, but being able to track everything, see where everything's at, and optimize every single thing in the company is amazing. And the cool thing is, the team here at Local Optics, we meet weekly. I mean, sometimes we're on the phone each day. I'm involved in the weekly calls. My team's involved in the daily calls. We're a huge client for them. But a lot of people right now are blaming marketing. I just need more leads. I need more leads. I need more leads. Well, you need to get focused, because if you're not booking every call and every form fill and converting every time you knock on the door and offering more to your clients, you're never going to be able to afford the leads. I mean, it's a conversion cycle. Do the marketing that gets the phone call or the form fill. Book that, knock on the door, earn the client's business. There's no point of even marketing and complaining about leads. Leads are hard, Ukraine, and I hear all the same shit. Look at what's going on in Iran, and you don't understand my market. There's so much competition, and we can't charge those prices because there's somebody cheaper. And most of those people shouldn't be in business saying those things. Like, I'm just sorry, but I'm in the toughest markets. I'm in a lot of markets. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm in Tulsa. I'm in Reno. I'm in Detroit. I'm in markets that people haven't been making any money in, and yet we continue to grow week after week. This is going to be a record month. We'll do over $10 million in profit. And I'm not talking shit because I was every single person on this call. I mean, I had one truck. It was used. I was calling family members to try to get business. But when you really start becoming a student, it'll change everything. They got location-based metrics that I'm absolutely in love with. Our number one lead source in our company, our number one lead source is my location pages. And it's by a long shot. And I wish I could share with you guys the pie chart, but that's proprietary information. My investors would have a shit fit, but you got to get with the right partner. And you got to get with a partner that's willing to meet with you and tell you what to do to get better and actually use the people on their team. Nate's going to blow your mind when he gives you guys the demo. And then the last thing I'll say, right now I'm spending about 14% of my revenue on marketing. It's getting harder out there. And I'm doing every single thing I can to find more leads. I mean, we started running social media. I'm running everything. I'm running newspaper ads. But my number one source, once again, is my GBP. It's the Google Business Profile. And that's what these guys specialize in. And I think they're the best at it. When I met Nate, I asked him, would you allow me to make an investment to build this out for me? And they did. So with all disclosure here, I've invested in this business because I believed in it so much. And that was a while back because I said, I want to be on this train with you guys. And I want you to pay close attention to me because my business right now, we're at 110 million of EBITDA this year. I got to figure out a way to get it to 500 million fast. And so we're getting more involved with acquisitions. But I just think I could vouch for every single person on the team. They'll take your phone call. They'll honor their word. They'll do what they need to do. And I couldn't say their praise enough. I don't do business with people that I can't get behind. And I fired a lot of my marketing companies in the past, and once I got to work with these guys, it made a real impact on the business. It really did. So that's enough from me, but I just really appreciate knowing these guys, and they're going to do great things. And I think you'd be a fool not to make a phone call and see what these guys can offer and just do an analysis of your business and where it sits today. So thank you.
Thank you, Tommy, so much. Everybody, please join me in thanking Tommy for his time. He's a very busy man. Thank you, Tommy. We really appreciate your participation today.
You bet.
Okay, so I promised not to do death by PowerPoint today, guys, but I really want to help paint the picture. I see a lot of some current clients on the phone today, some hopefully potential new clients on the phone today, all very focused in marketing and running a business. And so I want you all to just take a few seconds and think about all of the dashboards that you or your team are required to go through just to pull in a good source of truth on how you're performing in the markets from an SEO social perspective. Here on the screen, we call out some examples, whether that's Google, Review Dashboard, ServiceTitan, GA4, LSA, Search Console, CallRail, Yelp, social media channels like Facebook. I've named 8. Some of you might have named more in your head. Some of you maybe 1 or 2 less. But the point is that amounts of data is not the challenge. We have a copious amount of data. The challenge is that the data sources are all disconnected, and all of these platforms look at data in different ways, right? And so at the end of the day, this is the problem that we've set out to solve with MLAP, getting to a place where your marketing teams can trust the data that you're bringing in. And I do want to take a couple of minutes and just talk about the difference between business intelligence and market intelligence. So business intelligence, or BI as it's called out in the industry, it's going to tell you what has happened. And for many of you, this is coming from ServiceTitan. Others, it could be a Power BI dashboard, but it's going to give you things like your revenue, how many jobs you're running, what's your book call rate, your average ticket price, your close rate. All of these things are a snapshot of a picture in time of where you are at today, and it's a conglomerate of all of the locations and the markets that you serve. But market intelligence goes, into Google rankings, GBP views. What's your competitor market share looking like? What's your review velocity looking like? How are you doing in the local map packs? What is organic traffic really doing for your business? So why things are happening on the business intelligence side is coming from the market intelligence. So the goal of MLAP is to blend the ServiceTitan data in with all of these different market intelligence sources so that you're making decisions that are confident and you know where to invest your money next. And the gap becomes very, very real because it's not just a gap, but it's a gap that requires a lot of manual work to fill. So whether those are in spreadsheets, different exports, pivot tables, asking questions of the team, finger pointing maybe within the team, although I know none of you experienced that, having lots of meetings, and then maybe getting into a decision that you have a 75% confidence rate in, those are the days of the past. With MLAP, we are providing you not just a dashboard, but a true platform where you will have insights into all of these different markets on a per location basis. Not overall, how is one market performing over the other? And how do you blend that into ServiceTitan to understand why one location might be winning over the other? We've also introduced a concept of playbooks, not just showing you data like any other dashboard can do, but telling you and helping educate you on what we think you should do with that data to help meet your business goals and help you win in the markets that you want. So not just showing you data, but helping you understand what to do with it. So you go from a 75% trust score in your data into 90%, at least we hope 100% trust score in that data. And how we're helping you turn that into decisions is obviously you've got all of your data here. This is represented on the left. Different Google business profile data, maybe Yelp, different local ranking scores, website analytics, et cetera. And these are all things that are showing you how you're performing. And you know that you need to invest marketing dollars, but you maybe not, you're semi-confident on where. So pulling that ServiceTitan data in together to really help you understand who needs the help, where you should be investing money so that your markets are winning, again, is the purpose of MLAP. Smart budget allocation, scale with confidence, and make sure that you are finding high ROI markets to open up new locations in next. This last slide, I promised, and then you're done listening to me, is just meant to really be a roadmap slide so that as you're looking at the demo that Nate's going to show today, you really understand that this is where we are now, but we're not done yet. So today you'll be able to see organic performance. We are a certified ServiceTitan partner, so you will see the ServiceTitan data flow in through our integration as well. Location comparisons, executive reporting, again, that concept of playbooks is available as well. But then what's coming next? Agentic recommendations built on AI, predictive insights, automation of alerts and forecasting, and then us investing further into the concept of playbooks so that, again, this doesn't just become another dashboard you open up once a week on your screen, but you're leveraging this as a true tool to help you grow and expand your business and market share. And without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to introduce you guys to those that don't know, Nate Fisher. Nate is our Chief Technology Officer here at Local Optics. He's also the brain power behind all of the products that we sell. He's been in business for, I think, over 20 years now, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, building products, building SEO-based products to help grow markets. And then just a quick reminder before he starts talking, please leverage the Q&A, leverage the chat. You're going to see a lot of functionality today. Obviously, we can't get through every detail. So if there is a question, please don't be shy, leverage the chat function. And Nate, it's your show.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Tommy. Before we dive in, I'll give a little bit of background on myself. I am the son of a software engineer, an aerospace engineer to be exact. I started writing software when I was very young, 12 or 13 years old, was lucky enough to go to a technical high school that was feeding into Caltech and really just found a passion of building stuff on the internet. I have a pretty wide swath of experience across digital marketing, primarily SEO, although I've spent quite a bit of time in paid ad accounts. I've spent a weird amount of time in the cybersecurity space, and really all of that has been spent problem solving and building stuff. I have been on the agency side. I've been building software and a software owner for that entire time. I've worked in a number of the hardest verticals for digital marketing, spent years at a company as a partner that primarily focused on personal injury, which is an incredibly difficult space with a lot of budgets, a lot of problem solving needed for those campaigns. Spent a bunch of time in home services, spent a bunch of time in healthcare, working with one of the largest health systems in the country, shepherding a flock of about 1,800 listings across practitioner listings, clinics, hospitals, and I think have benefited from what some would call maybe an obsessive personality. And so from my experience in a lot of these environments, and then being lucky enough to meet Tommy, and essentially being handed 100+ locations and asked the question, all right, what do we do and where do we do it? Where do we push budget? How do we ensure that we're staying at the top? That ended up resulting in the initial version of MLAP, which was essentially a bespoke custom. Think of it as a Power BI for the trades, where we had directly integrated with A1's ServiceTitan account. We had access to all the different channels of data that we'll hop into here. And it really helped us essentially make decisions and action data. Where do we push budget? Where do we need to call up a local office and tell them, hey, get your act in order. You guys need to, or girls need to push more reviews through your system, making sure that paid data and paid vendors were doing what they should be doing. And at the end of the day, in 2026 and even the last couple of years, any digital marketing campaign in a local environment needs to be multi-channel. So Google is incredibly intelligent, although at times it feels like it might be a little bit dumb. But what you're doing with paid is going to affect what you're doing on your website's SEO, is going to affect what you're doing with your GBP, and all of it kind of swirls together in this complex environment. If you're running any amount of channels, let's say you have a single location, you're doing local SEO on your GBP, which comes with a call tracking number. You're doing website SEO and you have a location page or maybe a couple attached to that GBP. Those are going to have their own data, their own call tracking numbers. Then you're doing LSA, probably doing AdWords, probably buying leads from maybe Angie's or Thumbtack or running Yelp traffic. And that's really just a small handful of the channels that are available. And now let's say you have 10 different locations. Well, now you have essentially 70 unique data streams. And as you add more locations, even with an ultra talented marketing team like A1 has, you start to get really bogged down in the data. It becomes a pretty arduous, time intensive task to even make heads or tails of how channels are performing over the last quarter, over the last month, year over year, any of these executive level questions that need to be answered so that the team can actually get to work. And so that was kind of the background of building the initial version of this. And then as we got into really trying to bring this to market and making it production ready for a bunch of customers, we very quickly realized that just A1 actually had so much data that took a pretty hard engineering challenge to even load all that data in, sync it consistently, and then do the math and the database queries to actually provide actionable insights. And so that kicked off what has been quite a fun, if you really like data engineering, journey of building our new production version of MLAP, which I'm sure nobody cares, but I care very deeply. It's on a pretty cool piece of technology called ClickHouse, which is used by some of the biggest companies in the world, Netflix, Cloudflare. And with that background in place, I'd like to just share my screen and hopefully not ramble too much, although I've been told I have a habit of that. And I'd like to just get your eyes on MLAP. So if someone can let me know that my screen is sharing, perfect. So to start, MLAP has the concept of projects. So if you are a single location company, you put all your locations into the platform, you put them in one project, and off you go. If you're potentially a private equity firm or you have multiple brands, you can have them all in one project, you can have them in multiple projects, and you can do some fun things like benchmark performance across your locations, across your brands, and slice and dice your data in a bunch of ways. So once you have your locations added, I think the first and most important data source that we connect into, like Alyssa mentioned, is we are an official integration partner of ServiceTitan. So really our North Star, and especially any business operator's North Star, is your revenue and your net profit. But as far as ServiceTitan is concerned, we hook into there and we sync in all of your ServiceTitan data in a read-only fashion, which means that we can't actually affect your ServiceTitan. We can't affect your ServiceTitan account. We essentially just pull the data out. We do a one-time initial sync, and then we listen as data flows in day after day. Then what we're doing is essentially mapping your ServiceTitan jobs and the ecosystem of ServiceTitan data to your locations, which turns out that's actually a gigantic challenge. That's why if you've been onboarded thus far, you've seen it's a little bit of back and forth, our team kind of working through your data, understanding how does this actually link to a location. And so we abstracted that into a ServiceTitan configurator, or a configuration step that our team handles to essentially make heads or tails of, if I give you a job in your ServiceTitan account, how do we link that to one of the locations or the actual location that serviced that job? Once we get into your ServiceTitan data, I'm just going to ramble off the analytics data sources that we're syncing and some of the ones that we're currently in development and planning on adding. So we have GBP analytics. That's the data that comes from the Google Business Profile API, things like your impressions, how often you show up, for what keywords you show up for, and we're syncing that constantly. Then we have our own GeoGrid data, which is essentially your local ranks. If you've seen those heat maps around the industries, we were one of the forerunners of bringing that to the market. And we have a serious amount of infrastructure around local rank tracking, which plays into all of the things we're doing with organic data. From there, we have both Google Search Console as well as Google Analytics 4. And so if you are running a location page strategy where you have a unique location page for every single one of your locations, we can hook into that and map that traffic to that location so that we can understand the health of your website SEO over time and how the strategies that you're deploying or your vendors are deploying are actually affecting that. Moving down the list, we do have Bing Webmaster Tools. So if you are integrated, and everybody should be integrated with Bing, even though there's a bit less traffic there or significantly less traffic, Microsoft is actually providing a ton of data to make up for that less traffic. So there's a lot of keyword rich data in there. There's a whole new functionality around AI visibility. And that's a great thing to be adding. And if you have a Google business profile, you should have an analogous Bing listing because there is traffic there. There are leads. And like Tommy said, the name of the game is running not as many channels as possible, but as many channels as competently as possible, essentially. We also have paid data. So MLAP version 1 was our organic data sources. That's really where we cut our teeth and was our initial kind of entry point. From there, we have Google's local service ads integrated. So that is something that, side note, there's a change coming there. Google's migrating LSA to the actual Google advertising or Google Ads infrastructure and potentially pushing LSA under PMAX. If you're interested in that, definitely reach out to us and we can talk through it. But we integrate LSA. We are integrated with Google Ads. We're integrated with YouTube Ads. We are integrated with Microsoft Ads, and we're also integrated with Meta Ads. So if you're running all those channels, we sync with them via the API. We pull them in, and I'll show you in just a little bit what that actually looks like. Now, we have some other very important data in terms of local SEO, local digital marketing. And one thing I spend a lot of time talking to Tommy about in the A1 team is that digital marketing isn't a single player activity. It's actually an incredibly complex environment where all of your competitors and what they're doing plays a role in what's happening. And one of the examples Tommy gave earlier about potentially having a competitor with more reviews than you, or maybe they have a faster velocity over the last 3 or 4 months. Those are very important things as you get to scale to understand. Maybe you're maxed out on rankings, but you are losing out on actual lead flow because you have a competitor that's kicked up their review generation activities. That's super important to know. So part of MLAP is not just pulling in your own data, but we're also leveraging our infrastructure that goes around, crawls in your local competitive environments, pulls data out of Google so you can see at a glance across any of your locations what your competitors are doing from a review perspective. We also dig into GBP optimization, category selection, things of that nature. But really the most important piece is we want to know at a glance what competitors are popping up over us in terms of their review generation strategy so that we can alter ours, put a little more elbow grease towards it. We have a number of other data sources in flight. So we have all of our organic data sources and all those ones I just mentioned live. We are actively integrating Nextdoor. We actually just got approved for their partnership program. I believe 2 days ago we signed the contract. That's the very next thing on my list here. I'm actually going to call Tommy right after this and talk to him about Angie's. We reached out to them to get into their partnership program, and we also got accepted by Thumbtack on Monday of this week. So these are our data sources that are integrated and in flight and in motion. Now, once you come in through the MLAP system, you'll work with our team to get all these integrated. It's an incredibly boring process, but that's why we handle it. And it requires OAuthing or getting API tokens for a variety of these, but we really abstract that process away. Now, once you get your data flowing, you have the ability to slice and dice your data in a number of ways. You can choose toggles, what you want to see, what's important, what traffic sources you're running, what traffic sources you're not running, and essentially customize the initial executive level dashboard so that you see exactly what you want to see. If you're not running YouTube ads, which a lot of companies don't, then that's fine, turn it off. If you're not running Yelp, you can turn that off. If you're not running Nextdoor, you can turn that off. You can also set up territories. So you can naturally slice and dice the data by state and by city, but a lot of multi-location companies have bespoke territories where they might be grouping locations in a way that is custom to them or their reporting structure, their FP&A teams, things of that nature. And so that's all built in at the very core. Now, once you get all of that set up, this is a test account that we'll walk through. We do have some of the paid data sources without data flowing here, but you'll understand as I'm walking through. So the very first thing you'll see, which is perhaps the most daunting dashboard, which hopefully I'll ease your worries as we go through some of the functionality that we've already added, is your executive level stats. So just at a glance, all of the data is flowing through. You can filter it by state, by territory, by city. You can do things like compare custom ranges so that you can really figure out across all of my channels as a business or a territory or a state or a city, how is any channel doing over any given period of time versus another period of time. So once you go through your stat cards, you then have a traditional table, and this is probably the most boring part, but we do actually use this quite often, and that's just going to roll up all of this data into a table. You can see everything I mentioned in terms of data sources. You can quickly sort it, figure out, okay, what's actually performing from a location perspective the best, or grouping locations by performance, doing all these things that give you ultimate flexibility. You can export this to CSV if you want to pull it into different systems. We're building an API, so you can pull all this data out in a very organized and formatted manner. And then for every location, you do have the ability to actually set up and add your service territory population. So as we get deeper here, you'll see why that's important. But just from a high level, it's a different way you want to analyze a market if you have a location servicing 1 million customers versus a location that's servicing 50,000 customers. And so that's also baked in, something that our team does. And let me turn my TV. I've been sitting in the dark here with no power up in Tahoe, just came back. So once you have your master dashboard set up, there's a number of things that we can dive into where you can actually get some pretty interesting insights. And so you can hover over any of these cards and really understand from a plain English perspective, what's the data, what are you looking at, why it's important. You can click into a lot of these cards and see a deep dive of actual or extra intelligence. And we use this quite often where we want to understand things like what locations are just performing better than others from a pure revenue perspective. Again, this is dummy data, so if it doesn't make sense, that's because we sloshed around some fake data in here, put in a fake company name for demo purposes. But you can see here at a glance what locations are performing well, what locations aren't performing well, some revenue versus service area demographics, daily trends, all sorts of things that we know that could indicate issues that we want to have the team look at, we want to put some resourcing to, we want to put some budget towards, things of that nature. So we have revenue intelligence, we have job intelligence. A lot of times this can show you data that's mismatched in your ServiceTitan account. If you are, if your team is doing attribution there via ServiceTitan campaigns, we often see that pull issues where a job got misattributed, and that can materially affect a lot of your reporting. And so we use that for tracking that. We use that for a number of things. You can see in terms of location efficiency, we're digging into job categories is a functionality that's about to come out where you can actually overlay the exact job category with all this data. And really, this just helps us keep track of what's happening with a particular group of locations or all of our locations. Let's see, you can pop into reviews. So again, another very important thing, like I've harped on, is how are our review generation processes going? I would say A1 is by far my favorite client in terms of a customer that actually knows how to get reviews. That is one of the best things as a service provider or a consultant working with somebody like Tommy, who understands the importance of getting reviews, both from an algorithmic perspective, but also from a conversion perspective. We live in a review-based economy. People are going to be looking at your reviews across a variety of platforms. And if you have a negative review sitting at the top, that can materially change your lead flow. And so with our data that we're tracking, we can see that. We can also dig directly in to the reviews themselves. And again, all of this can be sliced and diced by those metrics that I dove into there or articulated up front. So again, we have review intelligence, job intelligence. I believe we have another card here. It's going to be our GeoGrid intelligence. So this is local rankings. If you're interested in making decisions around what locations are performing from a visibility perspective and what keywords are performing, which can again push budget. You can toggle PPC based off of that. You can toggle it up and down. You can have an SEO team look closer at particular issues. You can diagnose issues, which we'll get to here in a second. But this is basically just us pulling in as much data as humanly possible and putting it into a format that our team, your team, any marketing team can understand and save a ton of time when figuring out how to action this data. So this is going to be the main dashboard here. Now I'm going to try to cruise through some of the other functionality. One of the other things we do quite often, if you click into any location, you are able to see the performance across all of our data sets in relation to your entire fleet of locations. So again, we spend a lot of time figuring out what locations do we prioritize, what channels are working, what channels need help, what vendor needs a phone call and some questions, where do we need to look at for an SEO perspective, where do we need to look at from an ads perspective. And so this dashboard and clicking in is essentially meant to answer all of those questions a lot faster than going to your Google Analytics dashboards, your Google Search Console, your LSA, even your Google Data Studio. If you have experience with Google Data Studio, you probably know it can be extremely slow. You can't customize it to answer the types of questions that a multi-location company easily wants to have answered. And so this is essentially super version of your Google Data Studio from years ago. And so you can click into any location, you can click across any of these data sets, and you can see analytics of how this location is performing across your fleet of locations. Now, you can also visualize this data and dig into a lot of data that is pulled from the US government. So not only are we pulling out your ServiceTitan jobs, we're plotting them and doing a heat map so you can see at a glance performance. We're actually pulling a number of pieces of data from the US Census. So you can see things like population demographics, like average age of homes, renting versus home ownership, all of these metrics that are extremely important for us to understand as we make decisions on where we're putting ad budget. One of the things I'll get into here is a big decision is, where do we open the next location? That can be a huge driver of revenue. We want to do it in a TOS compliant fashion. We want to do it in a way that avoids algorithmic penalties. We want to avoid competing with big competitors that already have a strong foothold. And so you can dig into any of your states from this view. You can really get an understanding from a geographical perspective how your marketing activity and ultimately your revenue through ServiceTitan is actually performing in any given market. And so you can click into any of these, you can zoom down, you can plot all of the jobs here. You can actually get all the way down into the demographic data that we're pulling, consistently syncing, and that can help you really understand If you see a dip in performance, why is that? Is that an external environmental factor? Is that something that a vendor needs to be on a meeting about to discuss? Is that because there's competitors that are moving into an environment? And so this is really all just answering that exact question. And you can hover over any of these items and you can get some plain English explanation about what you're actually looking at, how to use it. We get to our playbooks here in a second, which is our version of essentially saying, okay, we understand a lot of this data can be terse, a lot of it can be hard to make a decision. If you don't have a lot of experience in the industry, how do we solve that? And playbooks are something that I'll show you here that answers that question. Now, the next thing I quickly want to show, and this is about to be a lot cooler as we got all of our paid traffic sources in here. Now, I have a pull request or a big piece of code that is going through review right now that's going to add a lot of plain English here. I realize if you're not a math nerd, a lot of this isn't going to make sense, but what this feature does is essentially takes all of these data sources and through statistical analysis allows us to understand what marketing channels are actually contributing to revenue. So the entire purpose of this dashboard, which I'll do an entire video of as I plug in the paid data sources over the next week here, is essentially at a glance, what is my marketing team doing, or my many marketing teams, or all of my vendors that's actually driving revenue? And sometimes more importantly, what's not driving revenue? And so this is something I'm extremely excited about that is going to have a lot of impactful directional capabilities as soon as we get the PPC stuff added and math into these really exciting math equations if you like math. But I just wanted to preview this functionality as this is something that has taken a lot of time and is about to be extremely useful for actioning this data at a glance. Now, moving over to playbooks. Again, first version of MLAP was used by a small group, myself, a couple of other team members, and we were really using it to handle monthly and quarterly meetings and drive our strategy with the A1 marketing team. Now, I was told at some point that not everybody likes looking at gigantic tables of data and stat cards. And so we actually needed to boil that data into actionable playbooks. And the MLAP playbooks feature is exactly that. So this is essentially a series of actionable guides for different things that happen in your data. And so here's a live example. One of our first customers we brought on board had declining local visibility across their GBPs, but they had increases in SEO, or actually I said that backwards, increases in local visibility, decreases in their page level traffic. And so I saw that immediately at a glance. It wasn't as clear to some of the other team members. And so that became a playbook. And really what that meant was we need to dig into link building strategy. We need to dig into location page optimization, what changes have been made, and figure out, okay, it's not a GBP thing. Don't waste time on the local SEO side. Let's go really dig into our page level health. So MLAP playbooks, very actionable, very exciting. We have about 25 in here already. There's another 25 that are going through our QA process as I review them with team members, and we continue to make sure that they are accurate, actionable, and extremely helpful. And then the next thing we're doing is these actually hook into that first dashboard I showed, where we will automatically detect one of these signals and then essentially prompt you to run the playbook. So it's not just a fancy table with a bunch of data. It's actually showing you that there's an issue and then guiding you through the steps of debugging that issue or figuring out why that issue exists. So the next thing I want to touch on here, and then I promise I will get to our roadmap and I'll hand it back to Alyssa, is something that Tommy had briefly touched on, and that is the importance and the ability to expand your location footprint, but do it in an intelligent way. And so one of the things that we have under the hood here is what we call expansion IQ. Now, this is driven by all of this MLAP data. So you put in your locations, you have GeoGrids running, you have your PPC campaign data all sucked in here, and then you can run one of two different types of expansion IQ projects. One of them is you want to expand in a market that you already have your locations in. So that is a very nuanced thing to do. You want to make sure that you're finding the right lease, the right location. You're not encroaching on your existing territory, your existing visibility. You don't want to cause cannibalism issues. You don't want to cause local SEO algorithmic headaches because those are not fun to deal with, not fun to debug, and certainly not fun to solve. Now, the other type of location expansion is market research. So that's you don't have a location, you're going into a new market, you don't have to deal with the fact that you have your own presence there, but you still want to understand where should I open an office such that you have the best chance humanly possible in immediately getting a foothold, whether it's launching your LSA campaign, whether it's your local SEO leads, your AdWords leads, or any of our other channels. And so I have a quick visual that doesn't have all of our data in here, but I did want to show what you're actually looking at. So we're pulling in all of that MLAP data. We're pulling in a ton of census data, all of the things I mentioned in terms of home ownership, average age of the population, population density, all of these things that are extremely important to understand a market. And then on top of that, another little nerd moment. The Uber team actually has solved geospatial problems in terms of understanding if I have a map area or a geospatial area, what's the best way to actually do data analytics on that area. And so they came up with this library called H3, which myself and our engineers integrated across the MLAP functionality. And that allows us to pull in all of these data points that you see here and perform statistical analysis on where you should probably have your team look at opening a lease. So we're pulling in census zones, we're pulling in some custom scoring that I'm doing in the background. If you are doing a market expansion in a territory that you have your own locations, you can pull in GeoGrids so you can see all of those on this map so you can ensure not to encroach on their visibility. You can see zip code boundaries. You can see competitors, which is perhaps one of the most important things. You can see commercial lease opportunities via LoopNet. You can see geographical boundaries, and then you can also see drive time. So that's an important thing if you are not a, well, even if you are a service area business. But if I turn that on and I pull out here and I maybe hide this, you can actually see 5, 10, 20, and 25-minute drive times according to that exact point that I just clicked into. So a lot of times you need to understand if I'm putting an office somewhere, how is that going to be, how is my team and my trucks actually going to be able to service this region? How far can they go? And so all of this plays a role and spins up into this system that we use to drive location expansion intelligence, essentially. Where should we open the next location? So with that, I quickly want to touch on some of the roadmap here. We've done a ton of work. There's a ton of code in flight. There's a ton of code being reviewed literally right now by other engineers. I'll be turning off this call in 20, 30 minutes whenever we get off, and I'll be going straight back to writing software for MLAP. But we have a huge amount of things in the pipeline. So we have all of those extra data sources I touched on. We have an alerting system, like Alyssa mentioned. We're going to be able to tell you via an email, if you want a text message, if you want an alert in the UI, hey, this has happened since the last time you've logged in. Maybe your LSA spend has materially gone up in cost per lead in a particular market. Maybe a competitor has come and started generating way more reviews than they ever did in the previous quarter. Any of these things we can actually actively alert you to. As Alyssa also mentioned, we are going to be integrating this data with AI. So we have been doing a ton of work, getting all this data in, making sure it's hygienic, making sure it's accurate, making sure it's time zone aware, all of these incredibly difficult problems. And it's can still be a little arduous, even with our playbooks, to actually action the data. Well, we're going to be allowing you to have the ability to pipe this into AI, which can really understand data and see insights that a human might not be able to see at a glance, can kind of tell you what to do outside of just our playbooks. And then I think the most important thing that is going to be our next frontier is true marketing attribution from a pixeling perspective. So if you're familiar with Wicked Reports or Hyros, now that we have all this data in one place, for those that are using ServiceTitan campaigns in a very organized manner, such as A1, we can already do that. But there's a lot of companies that maybe have acquired a company that wasn't doing that. Maybe your marketing team didn't have things set up properly from day one. Well, we'll have a solution with that in the form of true pixel level marketing attribution. Now, one of the very important things to me, being in the industry for so long and using all of these attribution tools, is going to be a per channel custom attribution model. So you might be familiar with systems where they give you a first touch 30-day window and they're applying that marketing attribution across all of your channels. That bothers me deeply, because marketing attribution and the modeling around that is significantly different for an SEO campaign or an SEO channel versus a paid channel, and even across your paid channels. Your LSA and your lead generation assets and campaigns have a materially different way that you should look at them from an attribution perspective than a standard AdWords campaign. And so that's going to be really our MLAP version 3. Version 1 was organic data. Version 2, which we're almost completed with, is all of the paid data sources. And then version 3 is true marketing attribution. And then we're also looking at integrating not only other data sources, but other field software platforms. So we very much enjoy our relationship with ServiceTitan, but we realize customers are using some of the other software platforms, and we'll be integrating those as well. So with that, I feel like I rambled a little bit, but I'll go ahead and hand it back to you, Alyssa.
No rambling at all. What do you mean? This has been great, and so much work has been put into launching this and making it available for the masses. So there's actually a lot to cover. I'm actually impressed, Nate, that you got through on time. So good job. We do have a couple of questions. Tommy, I don't know if you're still with us or not, or if you had to leave, but I think with these questions, even if they're geared at you, A1, Nate, because you were part of this journey, you could probably answer them. I think, what do we got? Oh, okay, here we go. So what are the insights available to see in MLAP that were not as visible before?
They went over a lot of them. I mean, look, competition's a real thing. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but getting the right location, beating the competition, even if you rank number 1, really expanding that and figuring out how do you get the right. There's a lot of things that go into expanding the search, and Nate knows more than I do, but there's just so much data here. I mean, look, we've got a data lake, we've got a lot of things that we look at, but to know that this is our number 1 source based on call volume and lead form, I mean, it just kind of speaks for itself. But I think that's what Nate spent the most time talking about. My team gets on with his team, and we just really figure out what we need to do. And we always have like, these ones are murdering it, these ones we need to work on. And given any month, we'll be working on 10 to 12. And Google changed a lot of their terms and conditions about what you could ask a customer for. So we just got to be careful on that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that leads into the next one, which is like, before something like MLAP, how much time was the A1 team spending on compiling this information?
Yeah, look, what's interesting is we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know that we could actually drive way more leads by just paying attention to what's happening. So, of course, we had a lot of teams. I mean, we got a pretty big internal team. But when we started getting on it, there was all these aha moments. The lights were turning on, going, wow, we need to really work here. Wow, we didn't know that. I guess ignorance is bliss until you get that information.
Yep. Tommy, can you share a couple of decisions that you made or the team made as a result of the insights that MLAP gave A1?
Well, we
Not to
shut
put you
down a
on the
few
spot.
markets. We
Yeah.
shut down a few markets, and that was hard to do, but that's one of the things. They help us pick the decisions of where we're going to go next and what market, like what area of town we want to own. In Phoenix, it's probably Paradise Valley. In Michigan, it's probably Birmingham. I mean, in Milwaukee, it's Whitefish Bay. I mean, so understanding what audience you want to own and who you think you can compete with. But realistically, most of the stuff we talk about is about ad spend, um, where we're going to expand to. Like one of the locations, we're adding Kalamazoo because we're already in Grand Rapids, and they kind of helped us figure out where we need to go to actually be able to make the most amount of money there. And there's this thing I don't know, it's called possuming when you're too close, really, really close to another competitor. So they help. Look, I'm not into it day to day like my whole team, but I've been involved in all the major calls on a monthly basis, and it's just I meet with every major vendor we have each month, and we meet weekly. Then we meet on a major call on monthly. Everything from Valpak to how we spend money on social, to PPC, to direct mail, to TV, radio, billboards, you name it. So, yeah, there were certain markets that we just feel like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, so we closed down. Yeah, but we're opening new markets every few months. So, understanding we could have made it in those markets, but as you grow, you want to put the money into growing markets, growing populations, like even picking the right markets to go to next. You know, these guys at Local Optics are helping out a lot to pick the next locations to greenfield into or to buy companies in.
Yeah.
And then also what they've done is they'll take a company, and I will say, like, they help us a lot when we're going to go buy a company, is how much is this company's worth based on their marketing. There's other factors, of course, but they're very good at identifying. If you're doing any M&A work, these guys could help out a lot.
Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head, right, Tommy? Because you probably would not have opened up those locations in those markets had you had MLAP, right? You would have known that ahead of time. So this last question, I think I would like an answer from both of you, if at all possible. Tommy from the business perspective, and then also Nate just from the market intelligence perspective. But what advice would you give another company running ServiceTitan, trying to manage 10 to 20 locations? And I'm going to challenge you guys and say, what about 100 locations?
Well, look, you could have a ton of locations. I'd ask how much profit are you making? I put more money in. We set budgets for every market. We set weekly and monthly, quarterly and yearly budgets. And in the markets that are hitting budget fast, very fast, I put more money into them. Too many people chase budgets. I'm going to go well beyond our budgets in the markets that the right team, the right culture, people are winning, they're working together. And the markets that aren't hitting budget, I'm probably going to pull back from. There's probably a higher turnover rate there. The culture's not right. You're putting dollars where the dollars are at work best. I've got a finite number of dollars, and I'm going to put it into, if I hit budget on the 22nd, I'm pouring a ton of money into that particular market. And, Local Optics helps us understand, like, this is where the leads are coming. And then they'll tell us, look, if you spend more money here, you'll get a lot more leads. And it's really nice to know where you're putting money is a great opportunity to get the most amount of leads. When you got multi-locations, you could throw money at problems or you could throw money at solutions. I think investing in MLAP, you're throwing money at solutions where you know the dollars are going to go a lot further.
Yeah.
I would say having the experience of spending a lot of time in the A1 ServiceTitan account and onboarding a handful of customers, be very judicious in how your ServiceTitan account is set up from a campaign perspective. Please use campaigns, use call tracking numbers. I can hand a job to the A1 team and they can trace it back and say, oh, that was a billboard campaign ran in 2021 in this market with this location. That is extremely helpful to be able to associate this data, make decisions, understand how you're using business units, have a homogeneous structure. So if you're acquiring a company do your best to make sure that their ServiceTitan, or now your ServiceTitan, is set up the same across your locations. That's a huge problem that I've seen, is ServiceTitan accounts being used in different ways across a single brand. And again, just be very organized with your marketing campaigns. Use the native marketing campaign object within ServiceTitan. Put a spreadsheet together every time you're running a new marketing dollar. Make sure there's a campaign, a call tracking number associated with it, whether it's call tracking metrics, call rail, native ServiceTitan. That makes your life a lot easier, certainly makes our life a lot easier, and really allows you to get down to the exact science of what your spend is doing, which you really can't make decisions without understanding how your marketing dollars are being spent. Are they being spent effectively? Is there maybe a more effective way you could spend them? And so just being very judicious with a well-structured account and sticking to it. I think it's an exercise or a discipline. You can set it up good up front, but if you're not actively training new team members on how to use it within your environment, then pretty quickly you're going to have drift between what you wanted and what you have, and then you're going to have your marketing team that gets frustrated because pulling all this data takes hours and hours and hours without a well-structured account.
That's great. Those are all great points. Okay, we are at time. We're actually a little over where we wanted to end. On behalf of Local Optics, on behalf of Tommy and Nate here, I just want to thank everybody for joining. There's a lot of ways you could be using your time. We're immensely grateful that you chose to spend this time with us. Tommy, as well, you're a very busy man. I can't thank you enough for your partnership over the time I've been here and even before I came here. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everybody. If you have any further questions, you can always reach us at sales@localoptics.com. Obviously, you have a direct line to me at any time. My email is Elissa, elissa.d@localoptics.com. We're really excited to see what we can do together moving forward. And again, thank you for your time today.